about a fatal shooting in East Point involving a U.S. Marshal. 26-year-old Jamarion Robinson was killed in a hail of gunfire when a fugitive task force was attempting to arrest him. Police say they went to his girlfriend's apartment with several arrest warrants, breaking down the door and opening fire when he didn't answer. Robinson, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, was shot dozens of times. Today, the district attorney announced a civil lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice, saying the department has failed to provide requested information about the case.
To these officers.
Good afternoon. My name is Monteria Robinson. I am the mother of Jamarion Robinson. On 12/28 or December 28th of last year, 2018, the DA filed a federal lawsuit against the Department of Justice. No medical aid was rendered.
My name is Rashid McCall of Opposition Research, Investigative, and Protective Services.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. So I just want to give a background about how we met and how I actually got introduced to this case, this scenario. So we were at the Malcolm X Festival held in Atlanta, Georgia, and I couldn't help but overhear you on the stage speaking very passionately about this case that happened to your kid, to your son. I actually leaned over a little bit because at the time I was on post, I was standing, and it kind of drew to me because the passion which you spoke about. Would you be able to give the audience a little bit of background about your case and what happened to your son, Jamarion?
Okay, sure, yes. Again, as I stated, my name is Monteria Robinson. I'm the mother of Jamarion Robinson. My son was actually executed on August 5th, 2016 here in Atlanta, Georgia. A little bit about my son, Jamarion Robinson. At the time of his death, he was a student athlete at Tuskegee University. He was a biology major. He was actually in his final semester at the time of his death. My son was, just a little about him. He was humorous, he was athletic, he was smart, he was intelligent, he was a biology major. He was actually going into his final semester. August of 2016 would have been his final semester at Tuskegee University. But on August the 3rd, my son had just reached out to his coach, let his coach know that he had just completed all of his paperwork for school and that he would see him on next week for football camp. But on August the 5th, my son was sitting inside his girlfriend's apartment approximately about 1:30 p.m. when her door was battle rammed open by a group of rogue police officers. Actually, it was about 17 of them all together. They were from Atlanta to Fayette County, to Clayton County, to U.S. Marshal Service. And as I stated, he was sitting there watching TV when they battle rammed her door open, and immediately they opened fire on him, shooting my son, 76 bullets to his body. They threw flashbang grenades that landed on him, burning him. After that, someone walked up the stairs, stood over him, shot down into his body additional 3 more times. After that, they handcuffed him, drug him down the flight of stairs, dropped his body inside his girlfriend's living room apartment, and there he laid for over 8 hours. No medical aid rendered, no ambulance was called, none of that.
No, Mr.
Rashid,
excuse me. You being the investigator on this case, were there things that you found outside of the norm or anything that would signal any type of foul play besides the excessive use of force?
well, during my 20-year history of my professional history of being an investigator, I've never, ever came across a case that has been so egregious. And upon showing up to that scene, approximately a week after the incident took place, there is still an eerie spirit in the air. At the bottom of the steps, the round count started. The defects to the walls numbered 1 to 10. And as you begin to climb those steps, those defects rose in number into the teens, and into the 20s, and as you got to the middle, into the 30s and 40s, and as you got on top of that 3x3 landing. Because mind you, there were other rooms upstairs. There was 2 bedrooms in the bathroom that Jamarion could have retreated into to escape that volley of over 90 gunshots. As you made it up on that landing where he was trapped, though that round count entered into the 40s and the 50s, and behind him where a closet stood into the 50s, where those shots actually went into the adjacent apartment. Some of those rounds penetrated the back bedroom, and you could see daylight. So there was no accountability for the safety of the public, yet let alone Jamarion Robinson.
Ms. Robinson, when you were you able to question any of the neighbors or any of the witnesses or just any community members that might have been around? And if we were able to talk to them, what was their response to the actions? Because I can only imagine there were people that were around and saw this and heard the shots and heard everything that was going on.
Well, actually, I got a chance to go back over there probably about 2 or maybe 3 weeks after the fact. And it was me and my sister, and we just was kind of walking around, knocking on, different neighbor doors to see if they heard anything, or saw anything. And I just remember I approached like a 10, I think he was about 10, 11 years old, and I showed him a photo of my son. At that time, I had, this photo of him, and he said, "Oh, I know him. He was my friend." He said, "I saw him, all the time when he came over here." And I said, "Oh, he was your friend?" I said, "What you guys used to talk about?" He said, "Everything, just fun stuff." And he said, "But, I was so sad when, he got killed." He said, and then he said to me, "But after a couple of days after they killed him, they came back over here 2 days later and arrested the person that they were actually looking for," is what he stated to me. And so I took his number, his mom's number, and that information. I gave it to my attorney. But he just was saying that, he was so sad that happened, to my son. And just to kind of take you back to that day when my son was killed, my mom, my brothers, my uncles, my aunts, they all arrived on the scene. And my mom was actually, going off, saying, why did you all do something like this? This is not over with. You have not heard the last of this. And the GBI lady approached my mom and said, "Oh, well, we were looking for him from a week ago. He pointed a gun at a police officer and took off running." And then she stated, "Well, here's a photo of him right here." And then my mom looked at the photo and she was like, "That's not my grandson." And then my 2 brothers went like, "No, that's not my nephew." But my son was dead in the apartment behind them. And so my brother flipped out his phone and showed them what my son actually looked like. Because my brother was like, "My nephew looks like me." And he flipped out his phone, showed them what my son actually looked like. And she asked my brother, the GBI lady, Miss Atkins, asked my brother if she can get that photo, if he would airdrop it to her. So he airdropped it to her. They took that photo, dropped it on the news that night, and said East Point man had a shootout with police today.
We'll talk about controlling the narrative, but you said that you found out that they came back and arrested the person that
Well, that's what, like I stated, one of the little kids that lived in the apartment, he lived like right across the way, he told me that. That's what he stated to me and my sister.
But that's kind of the cut. So you found out not from any type of law enforcement, not from anybody who told you actually just...
No, because no one even ever called me, but they called me that day, Miss Atkins called me that day and told me that my son was killed. And I kept going, "No, not my son, Are you sure?" Because at first when she called me, she asked for, I think, Angela or Lisa, something to that fact. And I just was like, "You have the wrong number," and I hung up the phone. And then when she called me back, she said, "Is this the mother of Jamarion Robinson?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And then she stated that my son had just been killed by police, and I was like, "No, not my son," because I'm thinking Jamarion don't bother nobody, he stays to himself, he quiet, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, "Are you sure?" And she was like, "Yes, you're the mother of Jamarion Robinson." I was like, "Yes, I am." And when she told me, I just kind of collapsed. I was at work, and I was just kind of like collapse. But Rashid can kind of tell you more information about, the neighbors and what evidence he was able to retrieve from the neighbors.
And I actually want to ask you that. You said it took about 2 to 3 weeks before you were able to get back over there. Is that normal? Would that take that long a time period for you to be able to get back in that environment?
Well, it's normal for the family. That's why they hire investigators.
Okay.
Because they're not trained to do what human rights investigators are trained to do. Plus, they shouldn't be in that environment. They're still mourning. So we have to, understand the human element and understand when these type of heinous crimes occur, that we lean on professionals to make the right calls, to gather the information, to analyze that information. And that is what was done in this case.
Gotcha. So besides the obvious excessive force, what type of protocol do they usually go through when addressing a situation like this, in terms of having someone that might have a warrant out or that they might be looking? How do they usually, or how should they approach these different situations versus how this one was handled by actual officers?
Well, you have to understand we're dealing with a situation of intergenerational violence, right? So these forces, the whole foundation of all their institutions were based on slavery, a cruel institution in which we were kidnapped and brought to this land, right? So that is the foundation, and we understand that anything that you build on a faulty foundation, right, a morally corrupt foundation, right, isn't going to stand. So we look at these institutions that has been built on these immoral foundations, and what we have today are police forces that are not here to serve and protect the community, but to terrorize the community. When we look at our grandmother's generation, it was Emmett Till. When we look at my parents' generation, it was Mark Clark and Fred Hampton, the way that they were executed and assassinated, similar to how Jamarion Robinson was. It's the same thing with Emmett Till. So when we're here in 2019, although he was killed in 2016, we are still dealing with this intergenerational violence from these forces that come from institutions that don't respect our humanity, that don't respect our lives.
What the fuck?
We had the benefit of finding a video that
Really?
debunked
Police
that
out here
false
shooting folks,
narrative.
y'all. In the
Oh,
As a
house.
result of
God,
finding
Jesus
that video, we were able to break open this case. We were able to account for every bullet. We were able to account for the commands that they gave, right? So hopefully listeners will have the benefit of watching the video at the end of this. And the video opens with "Show me your hands," and is immediately followed by gunfire, automatic gunfire, the same gunfire that persists for 3 minutes into the video. And then there's a lull at which grenades are thrown at Jamarion Robinson. And mind you, he's trapped on a 3x3. Couldn't go anywhere. He had the option of dipping into 3 rooms on upstairs, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. But when I had the opportunity to visit Jamarion in the morgue after all of this, there were gunshot wounds to his feet, to his shins, to his knees, to his thighs, to his pelvic girdle. And if you understand the impact on gunshots to your pelvic girdle, you cannot move once your pelvic girdle is hit. You are in effect incapacitated. But those gunshots went past that, into his abdomen, into his ribs, up and down his arms, 5 shots in his left hand, 6 shots in his right hand. So when the video opens, you hear "Show me your hands," and then it's followed by a volley of gunfire, right? When the video closes, if you watch carefully, you see these U.S. Task Force officers chilling outside. You don't chill in a gunfight. And then you hear the video closing with a volley of automatic fire. When I had the opportunity to analyze that video, we were able to count every shot. We were able to fill in the missing pieces. Jamarion's voice was given life in that video. And we were able to determine that this false narrative that they pushed not only on the media, but the community and his family was untrue. And we proved it to be untrue.
Let's stay on that path of the community, because we've seen cases like this, and we've seen the extreme cases. What is it for the community to do? What would you suggest the community does to prevent this type of excessive force being shown again? And is there something that the community can do or stand against some of these different organized police forces?
Absolutely. I think that we come from a long tradition of human rights in this country. We have those champions those individuals who championed human rights in this country. And our cause for people to respect us as human beings is an ongoing cause. And organizations and formations and movements morph, right, to be able to breathe life and to breathe existence into that cause in every new generation, right? So I want to challenge this next generation to pick up the baton, to pick up that baton that I'm still carrying, to pick up that baton Monteria Robinson is still carrying, to pick up that baton that fell out of Martin's hands when he was assassinated, right? To pick up that baton that fell out of Betty Shabazz's hand when she was set on fire, right? To pick up that baton that Malcolm dropped when he was shot to death in New York, right? Because at some point we grow a little tired of carrying that baton. So it's the next generation's turn to fight for our freedom, to fight for our respect. So that is what the community can do. They can hold that baton up high and continue to run with it. Because if not, you're a co-conspirator.
Well, I do feel like it's our responsibility as the next generation to pick up the baton.
Because I can't say we're at war because we're not fighting back, but war is upon us. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? And we've had enough. I've had enough, and and this is still ongoing. People are still dying every single day. Every day, one brown or black person is killed by police. I mean, that's a fact. I think that number has risen,
Absolutely.
In the last couple of years. I think that number has definitely risen because they were saying it's 1.5, but I kind of think it's 2 a day. A lot of cases we don't hear about because a lot of families go with the false narrative. If you pay attention to the news, they always say, oh, I thought he had a gun or he had a cell phone, or I shot him because I was in a fear of my life. But right now, we're in a fear of our lives. So, war is upon us. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? At some point, we have to take a stand. And, we just started a very powerful initiative. And that's one reason why I was at the Malcolm X Festival called Tribe 76. Tribe76.com is the website you can go to. And what we're doing is asking the community to get involved. It's up to the millennials. This is your fight. We're passing a baton to you. And so we're asking everybody to go to tribe76.com, complete the information there, ask for your name, email address, just basic information, and kind of show your support that you want to get involved, because this is a movement, and it's time that we start here in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the home of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so he wouldn't want us to just lay down, and just keep watching this.
Absolutely.
It's time out for tweeting. It's time out for sharing stories on social media. The question is, what are we going to do about it? So war is upon us.
This is where they kicked the front door in. And this is where they drug him down the stairs. I'm gonna take you up the stairs. This is when they first started firing. You can see the bullet holes. Bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. All the bullets going up the stairs. 11, 12, 13, 14, and bullets 19, bullets 22. And this is where they killed him at. They came in here. That's where they killed him. They shot at him with automatic weapons, 35, bullet number 42.
I can kind of tell you where we are with his story, where we are as of today. I can say, December the 28th of 2018, Paul Howard, who is the Fulton County DA, did file a federal lawsuit against the Department of Justice for not, turning over the evidence, the records pertaining to my son's story.
And also not allowing the officers to be interviewed.
Right.
Because they are hiding under the guise of federal, the U.S. Marshals Service, right, which is a federal agency, and they're taking the position that Paul Howard does not have the right to interview them. Paul Howard does not have the right to have access to their weapons, to their reports. And I believe that, District Attorney Paul Howard took that very personally, because this was not a federal case. This was a local case that happened in his jurisdiction. He is a elected official. He has the jurisdiction to investigate this case and to hamper that investigation. He did not take that lightly. And as a result, he is pursuing grand jury charges, against this officer.
Do you have the list of officers that was involved in this case?
Absolutely. We have William Sauls, the Atlanta Police Department. Steve Shekshungos from the Atlanta Police Department. Steve O'Hare from the Atlanta Police Department. Daniel Timothy Doyle from the Fulton County Police Department. Christopher Hutchins from the Clayton County Police Department. Joshua Manually from the Fayette County Sheriff's Department. And Eric Hines from the U.S. Marshal Service, in addition to at least 10 officers from the East Point Police Department. So you had all these individuals out there on that day acting as the jury, the judge, and the executioner. Because we have to be clear about this. This was an execution.
And I would also like to add, being that he talked about the officers that were involved, several of these officers have criminal or have had criminal charges brought against them within the police department itself. For instance, Daniel Timothy Doyle, he had a history such as armed robbery, false arrest, illegal searches, burglary, and intimidation of an individual. Also, you had Christopher Hutchison. He had a history of DA seeking grand jury indictment for felony murder. So who's a criminal now?
Can you read that? So these are officers that already had criminal records or criminal
accusations. Yep.
Even up to the extent of murder.
Absolutely. And again, we have to look at our history. And the origins of these departments, the origins of these individuals who staff these departments, and the institution that has been built on a faulty foundation. So we should not be surprised. You know, every time that I see the blue lights in my rear view mirror, unfortunately, my heart jumps. My son's heart jumps. My father's heart jumps. My grandfather's heart jumps. My great-grandfather's hearts jump.
And who do we hold accountable for this? Who do we go to talk to about not only this scenario right here, but just allowing these people to still be on staff, allowing them to be able to patrol our neighborhoods? Like, who do we talk to about our own law enforcement, our own community enforcement? If these are the people that we are left to seek aid from or seek protection from.
Well, I think on the ground level, it's these individual departments. But more importantly, I'm of the opinion that we need to form our own security forces in our community to protect our community, right? If they cannot serve and protect our communities, we have to be in a position to get the adequate training and funding to support our own communities. Instead of giving them funding to terrorize us, give us funding to protect our own communities. Everybody from, the little homies that are out of school for spring break, summer break, to the elderly who live in the community who are retired. This is a community effort, right? And if we looked at this as a community effort and took away funding from the police department and allowed us to get, the training to be able to protect and serve our own communities, a lot of the problems that we see as it relates to these corrupt institutions will not exist. And we have to be very clear. I'm a student of history, right? Once upon a time, we used to have that security in our community, right? But when you look at the higher echelons of government, particularly when we look at my generation and my parents' generation, our communities were inundated with drugs, right? The drugs that in my parents' generation was a little different than the drugs that they put in the community in my generation. My generation was crack cocaine, decimated our communities, right? And gave rise to the prison industrial complex, which gave rise to the Bushes and the Clintons, right? Who do you think control all the telephone calls in the prisons right now? The Bushes. Absolutely. They're making money off of every single telephone call, video call in these prisons right now. They created this infrastructure. They're still getting paid off of our hard work. We went from chattel slavery with chains on us to release them niggas out into the community. They're going to pay for their own upkeep, and we're going to still continue to kidnap them and make money off of them because their bodies are more valuable in jail than they are on the streets. And then they reversed that policy, right? Probation, right? You get put on probation for every little thing. And if you can't pay that probation, guess what? We're still going to make money off of you because we're going to put you in jail, and we're getting paid for that. So, we have to look at these institutions that so-called have our well-being in mind and understand that although we were released from our chains, we're still in chains.
Now, you mentioned earlier that we are at war, and a lot of people, war is upon us. So what's the next step for us to, in your eyes?
Well, actually, as I stated that Paul Howard did, file a federal lawsuit, those officers were subpoenaed to go before a grand jury. So we're anticipating going before the grand jury in July. We're just waiting on the exact date for July. But, that's why I want people to get involved. Go to tribe76.com. Give us your information so we can send out a blast. So everyone can be out there that day, showing like, hey, we the community, we here. We would no longer tolerate this. We would no longer stand for this. Because they're saying that they're in the fear of their lives. Right now, we're in the fear of our lives. And so think about it, the average young child, kid, when they see the police, they're going to take off running too. But 9 times out of 10, they're shooting them in the back and killing them. And then they're not being held accountable for it. So we're demanding accountability for Jamarion Robinson. We, the community, because it's not because I can't do it by myself. I need the community support. I need their help. And that's where we are. It's Tribe 76. We call it Tribe 76 because he was shot, 76 times. And we are a tribe. We are a nation. We are the people. So, that's what I'm hoping, that the community get involved, show up so we can show out. Because to me, whether they move forward or not in July, I don't want to go into August the 5th, which would be 3 years. I don't want to go past that date, because to me, your time is up. All the evidence is there. All the facts are there. So there's no more, I guess, how to say it, what's the right word for it? Their time is up. Let's say it like that. Their time is up. And with that being said, we just ask that people follow us, on social media. I am Justice for Jam. On Instagram and Twitter, Justice for Jam. I also have a GoFundMe that I ask people to support, and that's gofundme.com/Justice for Jamarion, and that's JUSTICEFORJAMARION. And as I stated, I'm on all social media outlets as well. Monteria Robinson, and that's MONTERIA Robinson. So.
I appreciate you for coming here and speaking with me for a little bit. I know it's a tragedy. I'm sorry for your loss. And we're going to do our best to get this person out there and let them know that there will be justice for them.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.